there's a little bit of New Orleans history that I want to go check out real quick, and it deals with desegregation in New Orleans. In the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, this street was full of shops, department stores, banks, insurance companies, law offices, and places to eat. It was big business for the African American community, but there was one problem. The people working in all the stores were all white. So in the 1960s, there was a boycott of the businesses, and a group was formed called the Consumers League of Greater New Orleans. The group was formed right here in this building, the YMCA on Dryades Street. This building is over 100 years old and played a major role, along with the group, for the desegregation of New Orleans. The group forced the businesses to hire African Americans at all levels in all the stores on Dryades Street. Unfortunately, a lot of the businesses didn't want to follow the rules, so they closed and moved to an all-white neighborhood. You can see here that there used to be a streetcar line that ran down the street. It's been paved over and no streetcar runs on it anymore. I'm sure it brought families and friends to the businesses that once existed down this corridor, a corridor that went from a street full of businesses to a street full of empty buildings. Some businesses stayed, but over time the area became dilapidated. Rather than hire African Americans, stores just closed and moved away, leaving behind empty shells of what once was a thriving community. In 1879, a man by the name of Charles Kaufman opened a dry goods store right where this parking lot is. A few years later, they would build this building, and it would be Kaufman's Big Store up until about the 1950s. Looking at some of these old pictures, you can see the old building that used to be in that spot where the parking lot is now. And attached to it is the much bigger building which still stands today. It's now called the Ash Cultural Center. You can see that the building looks pretty much the same as it did at least back in the 30s and 40s, or whenever that picture was taken. That covered the business corridor of Dryades Street in New Orleans. I want to show you the public school where desegregation took place by somebody named Ruby Bridges. On the morning of November 14th, 1960, federal marshals escorted little Ruby Bridges to her first day at William Frantz Elementary School. She was the first African American to attend an all-white school in the South. This was when segregation in public schools came to an end in New Orleans and in the South. She walked up these steps with 2 federal marshals in front and 2 in the back, to a school where most of the kids had been taken out because their parents didn't want their children to go to a school with an African American. For her first year in the school, she would be the only one in a classroom taught by a teacher named Miss Henry from Boston, who was the only one that would agree to teach Ruby Bridges. There's another school that was integral to the desegregation of schools in New Orleans and in the South. McDonogh 19. Just 2 days after Ruby Bridges went to her school, 3 young African American girls came to this all-white school on November 16, 1960. Nicknamed the McDonogh Three, Leona Tate, Tessie Prevost, and Gail Etienne, who all lived in the 9th Ward, along with Ruby Bridges, had to take a very difficult test to see if they could even be allowed to attend these schools. These tests were intentionally difficult because the schools were hoping the girls couldn't pass so the schools wouldn't have to allow them to attend. But all 4 girls passed, and the rest is history. This integration process caused a lot of protests by the parents of the children in the schools and by other people of the city. People would throw things at the girls, threaten them, and say they were going to be poisoned. Because of this, the schools were forced to turn off the water fountains for fear the girls would be poisoned by drinking the water from them. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed a little lanyap from this Who Dat. Now go pass a good time.